So welcome everyone to another edition of SoCal Soaring Porch Chat, sponsored by NL Valley Soaring. And this is a bi-weekly Zoom and a YouTube channel get together with a speaker who is somebody who's an expert in their particular field or talking about a particular skill or technique or information about soaring and soaring cross country. And tonight we are extremely pleased to have Zach Yamauchi talk to us about leveraging technology in the glider to go far and cross country. So Zach, as many of you know, is a really great pilot who's done
Hey, Chris,
lot.
you mind stopping for a second here? I think
Yeah,
Scott is making some noise. And so if you haven't muted yourself, can you please do so? It's just difficult to hear the speakers. Thanks.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to find Scott and mute Scott. Why don't I have that?
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that was annoying. I appreciate that. So let's try that again. So Zach is coming to us tonight to talk about using technology and leveraging that technology in your glider to go far and cross country. As many of you know, Zach is an excellent pilot and has just gone gangbusters since he, soloed and got his license. He's most recently, congratulations to him, getting his commercial in power and his twin rating in power. So Zach, I'll let you take it from there.
Sounds good. Thank you, Chris. Let's see. Sure that this is, there we go. So yeah, the presentation tonight, as Chris mentioned, is leveraging technology to improve cross-country success. So I'll start this off. I think I know a lot of you guys in here. Some I don't. So sorry if this is redundant, but just to give you guys a little bit of a background about me. Went to high school in Truckee. When I was there, obviously they're known for the glider port up there, but didn't do any flying. I took one intro flight way back in the day, but just realized it was pretty cost prohibitive at the time. I think it was like on the order of like $250 per flight. So I went down to Cal Poly, down in San Luis Obispo, where I currently live. That's where I went for college. I studied aerospace engineering there, and I discovered soaring through a club we had on campus called Aquafleague. So on the weekends, on Saturdays, the club would kind of carpool and go out to the Avenal Soaring Club with a bunch of college students. We'd take lessons, we'd help launch each other. And that was really how I got my feet wet in soaring. So soloed there early 2017, license that summer. Also, if you guys are familiar with Nixus project, during my time at Cal Poly is really involved in that, getting that glider going, flight tested, all of those things. After graduating from Cal Poly in 2020, I became president of the Central California Soaring Association. So that's the club that we were actually flying out of as students in Avenal. So I've been club president of there since graduating up until just this February. And I think Chris, Chris O'Donnell, who I was speaking to early in the chat, he just superseded me as president. So if you guys see him around at contests flying this summer, thank him for taking the load off my shoulders for me. In addition to just my commercial glider pilot, as Christopher Stevens mentioned, I did recently get my single engine land and multi-engine land ratings. And I'm planning on switching from engineering to being a professional pilot here in the next year. Ship I fly, I've been flying for the last, I think it's going to be my fourth season on it. 1984 Discus A. I've got about 800 hours in gliders right now, so definitely not an expert in it, but I've learned quite a few things in the last few years of flying, and do to try to push myself and fly aggressively continuously. Last year was definitely my most successful season. I've flown contests in the past, but being in the US, a lot of our contests and national level contests especially are so far apart. So I do kind of tend to focus on the OLC/We Glide competition. So last year, worldwide, I finished first in standard class, first top of the junior. So beating all those European young guys. And then overall, worldwide, for all classes, all ages, I was ninth in that. Second overall in the US. And then as a result of this, I was awarded, or as the winner of the JS Challenge, along with another pilot from Germany. And it was a full sponsorship to go fly the South African Nationals in club class. So I did that last year in September and October. So quite an amazing opportunity to see how other countries do it and see how other pilots do it around the world. Then last year as well, had my first and all the way through 5th 1,000-kilometer flight in my discus. So just goes to show you don't need the highest performance class to do some fun flights, as long as you position yourself with good weather. So that's about me.
Cool.
So this presentation, I kind of want to start it out with everybody has their reasons, and everybody has their own draw for being in soaring. For me personally, it's about the journey. It's about getting better. It's about realizing I learned just as much on my flight last week as I did my first flight after in a glider period. And that just the learning curve is always steep. But for to continue to have that kind of success over the long term, there's a lot of tips and things that we can do, things we can take advantage of on the technology side of it. Because it's not just, I mean, we're living in the 21st century. Digital devices cost next to nothing, and we have, I mean, essentially full glass cockpits in a lot of gliders that you'd only find in airliners like a couple decades ago. So that's kind of what the talk's about is how do we improve our soaring, not just flying more, which is, in my opinion, I say that down here, the number one way to get better, but how do we kind of leverage technology to give us that extra edge, both inside the cockpit and out? So first, starting out with goals. So I think this is really important for all of us pilots, doing it continuously throughout the season, and then especially as we start flying again after the ship's been in the box for the winter. But coming up with goals for the season, and as the season progresses, maybe we check some boxes. Maybe we're looking for new goals. Maybe we're watching ourselves progress more than we were planning, but goals I view are very important. And the first thing in order to set those goals is we really need to ask ourselves what draws ourselves to the sport. So is it out there to race? Is it to win regional or national titles? Is it to compete on OLC? Is it to go enjoy the view? Is it to go far and fast? Is it to go set records? All of those things, or is it just to have fun? All of those things kind of impact how we, at least how I view, I'm going to approach the season, and how I am going to set up my flights, the things I'm going to aim to do, all those things. Next thing, what do we want to accomplish? So along the lines with what draws us to sport, like I said, what do we want to accomplish? So records, racing, all that. And then what are your constraints? Are you someone who can only fly 1 day a month, a few days a season? Or are you going to be able to drop everything as soon as the forecast shows good weather? So being realistic about what you can accomplish through the season helps set and achieve realistic goals for that. As I said, yeah, goals are milestones. They provide a quantitative measurement on our growth as a pilot. So if you don't have those things in place, it's really difficult to kind of gauge your level of improvement. There's these things make us better as pilots, and they give us reasons and specific things to focus on every time we take to the air. So finally, yeah, by far the most effective way to improve as a pilot is to fly more. So invest in what allows for this. So this talk is about technology, but don't come away from this talk of I need a better glider, I need better instruments, I need better equipment, all of these things. Every dollar you could put in that actually allows you more time in the air is going to be a dollar well spent. So yeah, I know there's a tendency to want the shiniest new glider and best avionics and all those things, and well, those things will definitely help. The best thing you can do, and unfortunately I see a lot where people neglect to do this, is they spend a lot of money on a new panel or a new glider, and then they fly it 1 or 2 days a year or 3 days a year, versus putting that money towards taking more time off of work, or going on a SORFAR, or going to fly a contest. I mean, that's where you're going to see the biggest improvement. And if you're just there for the gizmos and the gadgets, and there's no problem with that. I mean, those things are fun as well. But just keep that in mind as you make decisions on upgrades and other purchases in the activity. Yeah, Walt, go ahead. I see you got a question.
Yeah, Zach, is that your cockpit in the photo?
Yep.
What's that little red cord?
Oh, that's just a string. I've got this little, so I've got my vent in the front on the discus. And once I get up over kind of 100 knots or so, sometimes that vent will pop open. So in wave flying, I've
Oh.
got a little clip that's on the other end of that red cord that closes the vent and forces it closed so that I don't have any air leakage at high speeds.
Nice technology. Thanks.
Yeah. So balancing airtime with ground preparation. So the thing is this sport it's all encompassing. When you're out there for the day of flying, it's glider day. You're not focusing on work. You're not answering emails. You're not. It's very difficult to, at least in my opinion, to kind of split and be like, oh well, I can meet you for dinner after I fly my glider. No, I mean the glider day is the glider day. So beyond that, though, there's a lot of time that I personally spend and I see big benefit from of focusing on and thinking about soaring outside of the cockpit and on the ground. And in reality, half the year is the gliders in the box. So we've got, I mean, for most of us who aren't traveling the world, I shouldn't say most of us because I went down to South Africa, but before this year, September through March, April is kind of like dead year. And there's a lot of stuff we can do during that time that really gets us on the ground running the following season versus kind of coming into the sport without thinking or without putting effort into it, or without kind of keeping our skills as sharp as we could on the ground. So the biggest thing I found for me is finding things that interest you and dig in. So finding books, finding articles, finding YouTube videos, all those things that kind of keep you engaged throughout the soaring season. And yeah, maybe we're not being able to fly up in the Northern Hemisphere, but reading about people in South Africa or South America or Australia, keeping up with their contests, learning from those pilots, because that's their on season. So the link I have here, if you go to the Soar Avenal website here, this is for our club, and go down here on the side, there's a soaring knowledge tab. And this is a page I put together a few years back with just all the resources that kind of condensed into one that I found useful. And I will occasionally add or take away things on here, but things that I've found, like essentially if I could sum this talk up, at least the kind of knowledge part of it, into one place, it would be this page here. So if you are looking for things to do on a rainy day, or the weather's not good, or next winter, whatever it ends up being, you're away from soaring for a while, look at these resources, find things that you like, and keep the learning going, because there's so much you're learning by experience and by doing in the cockpit, but there's a lot of knowledge out there, communal and tribal knowledge, that you can pick up reading other people's experiences. In addition to that, keeping up to date with rules and regulations. I think as glider pilots, we kind of tend to get through our initial private rating and think that's where the ground school and the FAA regulations kind of stop mattering. And we don't really need to learn about controlled airspace or anything like that, because we're flying out of an untowered field in the middle of nowhere. Just keep in mind, we're pilots, we're aviators, like all other pilots that share the sky with us. We don't fly light enough aircraft that we're in the paraglider and hang glider unregulated space. So it is important to keep up with those things. And if it's been a number of years since you've taken your private pilot license, or maybe your last flight review you didn't really study through and you got a easy pass for that, just generally speaking, I think it's beneficial to keep up with those. The other part of that situation too is if you do end up breaking rules accidentally or blatantly, you can lose privileges that we have to fly. So not only that, it also impacts the whole community here. If one of us makes a mistake, the rest of us might see additional constraints placed on the sports, things like that. So please, do yourself a favor, keep up with those. And this link here I have highlighted. I think Bill is Bill Palmer on here?
Yeah, Bill's here.
Okay, yeah, Bill's got this wonderful page.
Yes, thank you.
of ground training. It's got a lot of videos, all of these things. So more stuff than, I mean, this goes well beyond just a private pilot level of knowledge. So great stuff here, great stuff to look at. So keep in mind this kind of stuff on non-flying days when you're trying to keep up with things. Finally, I know we're coming to the end of the we're coming to the end of the off season, but it is important that you use that time while you're not flying to keep up with your equipment maintenance and then improvement as well. So if there's something that was bothering you during flying last season that you've just been living with, now's the time to fix it. It's if there's a new instrument you're looking to put in, do it now so you have time the whole season to deal with it instead of changing your layout halfway through. Finally, an excellent, we'll talk more about this in detail, but expanding your understanding of the weather is something that you can never do too much of. So taking that time in the off season, looking at weather. If you have a SkySight subscription, the great thing is you can scroll down the southern hemisphere and look at what kind of conditions they have, because we're kind of dealing with mostly wave stuff, maybe a little bit of post-frontal soaring up north, but down south this whole winter, getting more familiar with how those forecasts run, looking at their conditions, looking at how things are predicted and then how they actually turn out as the model runs get closer to reality. Here's a picture of me being happy that I am on the ground. So it's not just being happy that you're up there flying. Obviously, we all love that, but there's a lot of good things to look forward to that we can do without on the ground before and after flying. Well, did you have another question, or is that still up?
Probably still up there.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna move on. So one of the things that's really helped me in my development as a pilot is looking at past traces, and not just where I fly locally, but other places I'm going to, or other places maybe I have a day or two there. And there's really two sources for that now. Kind of give you guys a background on both of these. I'm guessing a lot of you guys are familiar, and hopefully you guys made it to that WeGlide presentation at the convention if you were there. But I'll sum these up quickly. So OLC stands for Online Contest, and we'll just scroll over there right now. But this is a giant repository of old flights from all over the world. We can go into here, we can sort by region here, North America, US here. We could go by season. We can sort by daily score, best flights, distance records. That's always a fun one to look at because you can look, this is all time, not just by year. The biggest flights. And there's a lot to learn from these here. So if you pull these up here, and this is, distance records for individual pilots. So like Jim has a lot of these, but his name only shows up once. That's the distinguishment there. To get around that, you have an option here called Flight Finder, which I find helpful. And this is kind of their new way of sorting and cataloging flights at a single location. So we could put here, like for example, Avenal, and then do map, and it will show us, okay, this is 2023, say 2022 season. I'm not doing a good demonstration here. I think it's going to want this again. Anyways, you guys can play around. I'm not going to go into detail with this here, but use a flight finder to find past flights. I'll go this way here. My club. Let's see. All claim flights here. So these are flights out of Avenal here. Now it's working. From the home one, and we can look at flights that obviously they're concentrated here around the airport. But you could see all the other places people have flown from, not just from Avenal. These are all of our club flights here. But look at those flights individually and pull them up. There's a lot to learn from looking at other people's flights in terms of what routes they took, what kind of speeds they're getting, how strong their climbs are, where they're picking up those climbs specifically. And so being able to navigate OLC is an invaluable skill in all this. I found it really interesting to look back because I've only been in the sport for a few years, and there's people I fly with who've been doing this longer than I've been alive. And yeah, OLC only goes back, I would say, reliably about like 10 or 12 years. But there's a ton of flights on it that people have posted in that time.
Yeah, Zach.
Yep, go ahead.
Just want to mention that last year Dan Ryan gave an excellent talk about using OLC. You gave an entire talk just about using OLC to improve your cross-country skills. So just reminder, go back and check that on the YouTube channel.
Yep. Thanks for that shout out. Beyond that, we've got WeGlide, who's kind of the new kid on the block. So OLC's been around. It's two guys, I think two founders that are volunteering their time pretty much to keep it running. For what it's been and what they've accomplished, it's amazing out of just two people, and especially because technology has come a lot further in the last few years. They've really kind of led the way in terms of flight, I guess interactable logbooks, as you kind of think about it that way. But WeGlide, they're the new kids on the block. They're out of Europe. I think OLC as well, but this is a team of 4 developers here. It's a little bit more of a modern feel, and it's also based upon kind of a social media feel as well. So being able to look at, hey, Nico flew today. We could look at his flight, which is a pretty impressive flight over Florida. We can look here and see his pictures from the flight. So
Nice.
Beautiful day down there.
Wow.
As we're scrolling in here on the terrain, you can see throughout the flight, follow along, do the maggot race. So really a lot of the stuff that WeGlide introduces as features was stuff that you'd have to export a flight, an IGC file in the past, to software like CU and do the analysis outside of this. This is now like kind of a one-stop shop for flight logging, for scoring, for uploading, for interacting, for posting pictures, all of those things. So very, very powerful tool, and it just gets better and better with every update here. So he's got some beautiful pictures here, and then yeah, awesome flight. So I'm going to give him a like. He knows that I saw it and I appreciated it. And then there's a couple of other features here that are really cool. So satellite images here. Throughout the day, we could see the satellite playback on the clouds. So you could see what kind of lines he took, what kind of, I'm sorry, my internet connection isn't super great, so it's a little slow to refresh, but you could see how the satellite is replaying throughout the day.
Like you say, it's
Gotta find somebody. Hold on.
Kempton, I think you're unmuted if you don't mind muting.
Yeah, I'm trying to find
Thank you.
who's not muted. There we go.
So that's a great one with satellite analysis here. We've got phase analysis, and I've got a premium subscription here. So some of these, I think it's around $100 a year to pay for this, but this is paying for 4 people full time to develop this for the next couple of years. So it's definitely worth it, in my opinion. I mean, price of the tow, you get access to all of this data. But you could look at here. It tags as climbs on the map. I'm going to get rid of the satellite analysis here. You could see his climb there, 3.4 knots for 900 feet, 3.1 knots for all that. And then we've got a day replay too. Nobody's uploaded today, it looks, or I guess just 2 other. So we've got Victor here as well. But on a day that everybody would be uploading to WeGlide, we see a lot more gliders here. And then another one called a thermal replay, which is pretty cool here. I'll go back and show this on one of my flights, because I know there's I know that there's some from the contest earlier this year that had a lot more participation in, but if we go to thermal replay here, what we can see is that all these green dots that pop up show thermals that other people took who also uploaded to WeGlide. So I could see, like right here, I missed that 4.3 knot. I flew right by it. And then another, if I had taken a different turn here, there's a 5.5 knot and a 6 knot here, and look at some, maybe some terrain features or something like that. So this is a hugely beneficial feature, and it becomes more capable the more people who upload. So I encourage all of you guys to get a WeGlide subscription. It doesn't cost anything to for the base level subscription to upgrade to upload. It's all the same functionality as OLC has, essentially for free. And then the bonus functionality, I think this thermal replay is bonus, and that comes with the subscription. So if you guys like this and you like what it has to offer, consider pitching in for that upgrade. You get more features, and then the developers have more runway to make this product better. So Yeah, any question? I think I saw some questions here. Walt, do you have another question or? Nope. Okay.
No, you answered it.
Okay, great. Yeah, so WeGlide as a look back tool, both OLC and WeGlide are great. We'll talk about WeGlide more in towards the end of this in terms of debriefing, but WeGlide really adds a lot more to that debrief and the post-flight analysis than OLC does. OLC still does have quite a few good features for that, but WeGlide is just definitely pushing the envelope on that. All right, so weather forecasting, weather forecasting, route planning, and correlation. So I think Philip, I saw you in here, but here's a shout out to Philip's channel. He did a great video recently on soaring weather, how to read the weather, kind of how we're a lot of times we're looking at it backwards, and we're looking at the forecast on the soaring forecast, and then kind of ignoring the big level stuff versus kind of looking at the larger level, the mesoscale, the pressure systems, the moisture, where the at the large continental scale, where that weather is kind of coming from, and then correlating that to what we see in our soaring forecast. So at least in when I started flying, it's not that long ago, but SkySight didn't exist. RASP were definitely a thing then, but SkySight has really kind of dominated the market in terms of weather forecasting. There is a few other kind of subscription-based RASPs, like XC Skies, a couple other ones I can't remember, that are, I would say, competitors with SkySight, but aren't as capable now. So SkySight, when I'm looking at it, and we'll just go through here in terms of technology, I'm hoping a lot of everybody here has familiarity with this, and I'm not showing too many people too many new things, but I think Friday or Saturday was supposed to be a good day. So I'm looking at Avenal. All of the waypoints around here, if you haven't done that before, you can upload your CUP file into here, and you can actually see all the landouts, kind of give you an idea of where things are positioned relative to the weather. So one of the first things you can check here, and actually works pretty decently, is what's called PFD, potential flight distance. This is, as it says, nice thing about SkySight. Another nice thing is you can scroll over any of these tabs here, and it will show you exactly what this is displaying. So distance a glider might be expected to fly, taking off at first thermal and landing at last, blah, blah, blah. So that will give you a general idea of if the day is worth coming out. Or I guess I should say, it gives you a general idea of if you should look into the forecast more. These 2 days before, so Thursday, Wednesday, nothing's showing, and Wednesday was gray and rainy and not fun around here. So that's a one-stop shop you could pull up to and say, hey, if it's not showing anything, there's likely not going to be weather. This won't pick up wave, so if you are interested in flying wave, you'll have to look at the wave forecast in detail. Beyond that, so let's go to Saturday here. Other things I'm checking is thermal strength, which is the thermal strength, the stippling around here. The dots show you kind of the shear. So if they're bigger dots, you're expecting more wind. And there's also a parameter for thermal layer wind average. Right here that shows that we actually have 20 knots in the thermal layer, so it might be a little bit blown out, but hopefully the thermals are strong enough to actually propagate through that. Height of thermals, I think anybody who's using this or using a classic RASP is familiar with that. Q cloud base, so where the on a SKU-T essentially the temperature and dew point lines connect. And then beyond that, something I think that gets often missed by people looking at this stuff is your upper level and your high clouds. So looking at mid-level cloud cover and high-level cloud cover is always I find helpful to make sure that there's no surprises of coming out and saying, oh, well, I get out there and why aren't the thermals going to end up being good is because there's high-level cloud, and you won't see that on the Q cloud base. You might see some of that in the thermal strength, but this always tells a bigger picture of what's going on. If it's saying that the day is going to shut down late or start late, shut down early or start late, those types of things. So that's a top level overview of SkySight, but I know there's resources available. Chris, is there someone else done a talk on that?
Not this year. Actually, so, I do have a gap if someone wants to take up the.
Okay. Yeah,
Pick up
it's I
the-
mean, you could spend hours and hours learning that software. It's
Yeah,
it's so
it's-
useful. And if
it's
you don't have
crazy.
a subscription to that, these are this is I put this in the category of things that you'd put money towards that would allow you to fly more.
Yeah, for sure.
RASP, so regional atmospheric soaring prediction, I think is what that's stands for. But we've got one on the Central California, NorCal, that runs pilot up from the Bay Area, Val, hosts that. And so that's a good check on SkySight. If SkySight's saying something that you just don't really believe, you could kind of like check that. And if this RASP is also saying something that like doesn't seem real, check it with SkySight. So having two different kind of input sources to your soaring planning is definitely a beneficial thing. On top of it, I didn't include that here, but windy.com. If you haven't used this before, it's free. There's also subscription bases, but Philip talks about it in his video as well. This is great for looking at the mesoscale, the big stuffs, looking at the wind patterns, pressure, where the pressure zones are, all of those things. You've got parameters over here, so you could look at clouds, you could look at the temperature, you could look at rain coming in here, precipitation. Let's see, all of those things. So yeah, a great tool. This one's available for free with some extra features if you pay for them. And then the other thing that not just getting you out to the glider port on the good days, but another thing I find really valuable in these kind of high resolution forecasting tools is looking at not just our common routes. So in Avenal, for example, a lot of our flying's done up on the San Benitos here, kind of a convergence line that sets up from kind of Grapevine area all the way up to some days up into the Bay Area to Byron or all the way up to the Delta. That's kind of the typical route out here, but occasionally we'll have days, and I think Saturday might be, let's see, one of them, where you get the possibility of going kind of off the beaten path of either crossing the valley or going out to Big Sur or down the coast, things like that. So keep that in mind when you're looking at using these forecasting tools, is that it's not just should I get out to the glider port or not, but it's like what is possible for the day, how late you can push, all of those things, looking when your turnaround, your get home time needs to be. This can help you identify that and take note of it. In cockpit technology. So a lot of us should be familiar with you guys as glider pilots, but like what kind of going into the nuances and the details of what these particular things do and how they can improve our soaring. So everybody's familiar with a variometer. I'm going to break out all these categories on individual slides, but does it work like it should? Other ships, other pilots. By that, I mean, have you flown other gliders with other variometers? Because there's a good chance that your variometer might be not performing as it should. And you would have no idea, since that's the only glider you've flown or only glider you've flown recently. So if you're able to, I'd highly recommend getting in other people's gliders, hopefully 2 seats. Maybe you're lucky and someone will loan you a single place, but checking out with them, or better yet, you could let a more experienced glider pilot fly your own glider. And just get feedback on your variometer setup in your system. And then pilot preferences as well. We'll go over that. Live winds. This is something new to the market in the last few years. We'll talk about that. Glide computers, kind of their purpose, different options there. And then now running forecast in the cockpit on our screens in here. Finally, radio transponders, ADS-B FLARM. We'll hit on those things as well. So variometer, we all know what they do. That's, I mean, our primary tool as glider pilots is, are we in good air? Are we in bad air? Should we be turning? And what's the magnitude of the lift or sink we're in? One thing that I ask a lot of pilots when they're either got a new glider, they're putting new vario or instrumentation in, is are they using a cruise or climb mode, or is that automatic? Personally, for me, I'm a big proponent of the cruise and climb mode, being able to switch between that and not have to do it automatically. the meaning of that, if you're not familiar, a cruise mode would be showing like for example, a kind of push pull. Should you be flying faster, flying slower for the optimum McCready setting you're expecting? And then a climb mode might be a purely total energy variometer. So the reason you wouldn't want that in the run is that obviously the faster you go, the faster your sync rate will be. And it's not really giving you as much information as if you were to just get like a netto reading out of it. And the reason I like mine on switch is because oftentimes you're hunting around for a thermal and you haven't actually turned into a climb yet, which is what would trigger it to switch to climb mode. And doing so, I want to be in total energy mode or at least have a more sensitive variometer, whatever it ends up being is how I set it up. Ultimately, that's up to the pilot, but having an idea of how your variometer is set up and playing around with those settings and finding something that works for you is something I've seen a lot of pilots kind of neglect to do. You've got this amazing instrument in the cockpit, and you should 100% be using it to its maximum capacity. In terms of the data we're getting out of it, there's multiple outputs. So like on everything other than the Sage mechanical, we've got 3 different needles on all of these, and those are typically like a total energy, maybe an averager, and then a netto setting. But understanding how yours is set up, what pointer coincides to what output you're getting, and then what's the audio doing? Is the audio based on netto? Is it based on total energy? Do you have dead bands? All of these things. Ask yourself that. If you can answer these questions and you have it set up how you want to, great. If you're just kind of flying it because this is how it was when you bought the glider, or you're using the glider, a rental glider or something like that, figure out what you want to get. And then as long as you're not screwing with something that's like a communal glider or something like that, maybe you can set up your own profile on an advanced enough vario. Play around with it. Change the audio settings, change the deadband settings, change if you're listening to netto or total energy or all those things, and figure out what works for you. Sensitivity is something that is important on a vario, because if it's too sensitive, you're just going to get a lot of noise. You're not going to know what's really going up and what's going down, more so of just sensing noise in the data, not really what the air mass is doing. So you can go too sensitive in terms of like the integration period that you're logging over. Also, if you go too coarse on that, so if you have like I think standard somewhere between like 2 to 4 seconds as an averager, you go longer than that to 10 seconds, you're going to be blowing well through the thermal before the vario registered. So finding that and tweaking those settings as well is something else to play with and figure out what you like. Additionally, some of these higher end digital varios are offering horizontal gust filtering. So for example, I fly with the Butterfly, which is the one down here on the left. And that has a vertical air mass inertial sensor on it. So it does ignore horizontal gust, which increased your total energy estate essentially, because you haven't lost altitude, but you've gained airspeed. So it's going to register on a variometer as a climb, which you can't extract energy. I mean, other than a quick little pull, you can't really extract energy, and you definitely can't climb in it long term. So figuring out if your variometer has the horizontal gust filtering capability. I think Hawk has some kind of inertial variometer setting in it as well. How those things work, reading those manuals, understanding your varios is important. As mentioned before, live winds, this is a new thing on the market. I find it very, very helpful. I think I talked about it on my last year Porch chat, but in terms of navigating shear lines and convergences around here, which is kind of all present in our West Coast terrain and coastal versus inland air mass soaring we've got around here. Live winds is something that where the wind average is happening over the span of single digit seconds, maybe 10-second averager, versus a traditional wind might be averaged over say 30 seconds to a minute or longer, and is a lot more it's designed primarily for picking up the wind direction once you're circling and looking at your circling the drift of your thermaling circle as you climb. So live winds give you good wind data in cruise, going through navigating the air mass, navigating either side of the convergence or around clouds, all of those things. Definitely beneficial upgrade. I think the price for a Hawk upgrade, if you don't have a S100 already, I think a Hawk plus a S100, you're talking $2,500 to $3,500. If money is no object for you, that is might be worthwhile upgrade, but that's also when you consider it, that might be a whole season of tows or a week off work or something else that will be more beneficial than another instrument in the cockpit. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, Zach, what's the instrument on the bottom right? What's
Bottom
the-
right is also a Vario.
right, which
This is
brand? Which brand?
LX Nav. Both of these on the right are LX Navigation or LX Nav.
Oh, okay.
I don't know the particular product lines. I think one of these is like an S8 versus a S80, something like that.
Upper
I
right,
think this
that's the,
top-
isn't that the Hawk? That's not
yeah,
the
this
Hawk?
is showing the Hawk display on, I
Yeah.
believe, an S80 or S100.
Yeah, that's
I
an
think-
S1, that's an S100. It's different pages of the same instrument.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, this one on
yeah.
the bottom is the S80, I think, because it doesn't have the knobs on it, right? This one
Oh,
would
yeah,
be synced
you're
up
right.
with a LX display,
Yeah.
8000 or something.
It just looks nice just because I can see it showing you the average, the netto, altitude. I mean, it's displaying a lot of
Yeah, and you would be
information
able to
right
have the same page on the top one as well. It just
Mm.
depends on what page you're going through.
there. Right.
I had an
So
S80 that had knobs, but anyway.
what was that?
Said I had an S80 in my LS3 and it had knobs on it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not familiar with LX products on that, so yeah, not quite sure which. So I think S80 has knobs, and maybe the S8 or V8 or the V8 or something doesn't, but you can look into that more on like Wings and Wheel sites.
Yeah.
So glide computers here. So what's the purpose of a glide computer? I think especially for when I was getting into the sport of understanding what exactly is this thing supposed to do. So the way I look at it, there's two purposes to a glide computer, which is to increase your situational awareness and decrease your pilot workload. Before glide computers, I think there's people in this chat who predate glide computers, but you're navigating visually, or you're using maps, you're using turn point cameras to record where you are, all of those things, which is a lot more unwieldy than just a device with a screen that shows you exactly where you are and displays the data you want to see. Beyond that, we can take glide computers to give us additional in-flight data, give us parameters in terms of speed or distance to go of what we've got. But primarily, I mean, remember this at its core, it's to increase your situational awareness, as in where are you and where's the closest land out, and then decrease the workload in terms of I don't need to pull maps out. I don't need to do math in my head of I'm 6,000 feet here, I'm 20 miles from where I'm trying to go. Where am I on final glide, or am I below or above? Now I have to add the wind into that. That becomes very quickly a mental math exercise that you don't want to mess up. And then also takes you away from focusing on soaring versus looking at the screen and having a green or a yellow or a red color indicating your status on of height relationship to final glide to a land out option. So we've got a couple of options in this. There's in-panel versus mobile setups. So in-panel being the LX ecosystem, primarily the LX 8000, 9000, 9060, 9070, or whatever. I'm not an LX guy, but there are different options from the LX point of view, and they are very, very capable flight computers. Kind of the Apple product of the soaring world. They're high end. I think these systems start around like the $4,000 to $6,000 mark before installation, and then probably double that for the cost of installation. But they are capable. That being said, I mean, you saw my panel back here. This is a 20-year-old S100 or SN10 that I don't use anymore. Really, I just replaced that with the attitude indicator, and then a variometer. And then over here on the side, this is my UD2, which is, I think at this point, like a 15-year-old piece of hardware, but gets the job done. They're now moving towards a Navitor, who makes the UD2, came out with the UDN, which I'm gonna hopefully be trying out this season. It's Android based instead of like Windows Mobile, so jumping into the 21st century now with this upgrade. And then this becomes a standalone unit, so you can, if you're flying other multiple gliders, you can just bring this with you, and there's no need to show up to the contest and rewire a panel or build a panel or something like that, or learn someone else's avionics.
Right.
This is something you pop in and has its own GPS, has its own sensor, and can do all that standalone. As we're talking cost delta, I think this device is about $1,000. You don't even need this. You can go with an Android phone that you could pick up for $50 and put XC Soar on it. Again, increase situational awareness, decrease workload. All of these devices will do that. Even a phone will, with XC Soar on it.
Can
cost
I
up-
add something
Go
here?
ahead.
That the the same software that runs on this Audi N is an
Yep.
app that you can get for your phone. It's the
Oh.
CU Navigator.
Right.
It chews the battery, so bring a an external battery with you. But I believe it's exactly the same software.
Yep, it is.
So there's a free version, and there's a pay version with more functionality. So it's a real easy way to get someone to try it out, basically for free, to see if they like that functionality. And I've shown that to a number of my students and stuff who, like, oh, this is cool, and they can play with that. And then before they invest $1,000 in something more big.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, so if you do want to play around with that software, do it on an Android phone first before you make the plunge, unless you know for sure it's something you want to buy. And then on top of that, getting some time. We were talking about this earlier before we started, but getting if there is a simulator available to you, or you're able to buy a license of Condor, being able to configure the glide computer and flight computers on the ground outside of the cockpit is invaluable, because it's just, again, decreased pilot workload. We don't want more pilot workload of finagling and messing around with our flight computers while we're also trying to core a thermal or pick the best line. So these are things we can take care of in a simulator where you're not paying for a tow, and you're not worried about hitting a mountain or getting low in no man's land. So keep that in mind when you do introduce new hardware, is do as much setup and simulation on the ground as you can.
Zach?
Yep.
Walt Rogers here. Yeah, I'm going to fly with CU Navigator this year.
Okay.
In fact, your first contest. So that's why
Excellent.
I'm getting some time on a Condor to get more familiar with it. And it's going to be on an Android phone that I've used for 5 or 6 years with LK8000, which is another version of XC Soar. And I don't believe it requires a license, the extra premium version. I think it'll work either way. It just works better if you have CU license.
I think that allows like SkySight now integration and some other features.
Yeah, it wasn't 100% clear, but you really need to have a CU license from Navitier anyway. So if you already have one, then it's already free. The only issue with the Android phones is they overheat. They need external power, and it need a lot of care. And talk to me offline about what it's going to go through to do that.
Yeah.
It's not as rugged and robust in the heat, so you have to take special precautions.
Yep. Thank you. What was I going to say? I forgot that point. Maybe I'll remember it, but yeah. So beyond that, in all of these cases, XC Soar, UDI, LX, keep those databases update. So in our region, we typically every year put out a new set of databases, or a new database set that includes all the changes from last year in terms of, hey, this field's no longer landable, or hey, there's a new strip out here, or there's power lines that we found on this strip. All those things. Get those up to date. It's an easy thing to take care of at the beginning of the season, or anytime throughout the season. But just don't be flying on 5-year-old database if there's a newer one available. Up in, I think Jim Staniforth in that area does a great job of maintaining those databases. So if you don't know where to find those, just ask a more senior glider pilot, and they'll point you to it.
Yeah, well, I will say if you have like a pad or an Android device in the cockpit, and you're out at Inyokern or something in a hot summer day, just keep it covered until you're off tow, because they'll just overheat and they won't work for 30 minutes plus. I have several cases where that happened. That is a thing, definitely.
Ditto that for sure.
Yeah, and this is Kempton. I pretty much use CU Navigator on my iPhone 13, and I upgraded from an iPhone 12 only for that reason, because the screen was brighter, because the 12 would overheat, and then of course it would dim the screen, which was of course useless when you're up at altitude. So that is the only reason I went from a 12 to a 13.
And does that solve the problem, Kempton?
Yes, I mean,
Okay,
I plug
great.
in an external battery, but the extra brightness and the less heat, I can now run it. I've run it summertime and wintertime, and it's fine.
And what were
version
you using
iPhone?
before that?
An iPhone 12 mini, and then so now I have it running on the 13 mini.
Okay. And what software were you using before that? Were you XCSOAR?
No, I used iGlide,
Okay.
which I really
Interesting.
liked, but it wasn't as power demanding. Yeah, it wasn't as power, because in the back seat of my ship, I have no flight computer there. The clear nav is up front, so it's up until now it's been just look out the window.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Captain.
So another piece of technology we can leverage now that SkySight really rolled out and is pioneered is in cockpit forecast. So having the weather that the last run of the forecast before you took off, having that displayed overlaid on your flight computer map can be very useful. So I know for a fact it's available on the LX Nav ecosystem, and then UDI, and all the way back to 2 and IGC, the ones I've run the last few seasons. Keep in mind, though, the important thing on this with new people getting into it is that it's a forecast. It's not a real-time overlay. So if there are clouds on one peak and SkySight shows a red blob on another peak with nothing there, go fly the clouds, go fly the weather. This is good, especially for helpful for blue days, where really you're kind of just picking a point, picking a line and going for it. Maybe you're flying ground-based, like terrain-based lift lines. But for the most part, I mean, if there are clouds, use those, use moisture, use the hints of the day. If SkySight is pointing you to a red bar and you fly there and there's nothing there, then disregard the forecast, because the forecast is wrong at that point. It is very helpful to give you hints and to give you suggestions and give you another data input, but it is just that, another input. It's not, it is not a Google Maps, fly this direction and you'll get 10 knots up. So for new pilots, I've seen people say, oh, well, SkySight says there should be lift there, and I flew there and there's nothing. Well, I mean, it's a forecast, and we're really we're in a cool, unique time where we have the capability, or at least have access to these products that have such high resolution forecasts that sometimes it's accurate and it's kind of freaky and mind blowing. But then there's other times as well where it's just, I mean, it's math. It's trying to do something that's on the edge of impossible, and sometimes it gets right and sometimes it's a little off.
Yeah.
I tell people that SkySight tells you where the fish are, but they won't tell you where a fish is.
Exactly. That's a good way to think of it.
Yeah, for my area, our area where I fly in Antelope Valley, I feel that SkySight typically over predicts.
Yep.
That's my experience so far, yeah.
So in terms of the actual overlays, we've got, I think there's 4 different parameters you can show: convergence, XC hourly speed, wave, and wind. So convergence is the one I think a lot of people are familiar with. Convergence, I did the talk about it last year. It's kind of the buzzword of the decade for soaring pilots, but it's very helpful for that. But a lot of people don't realize that there's other overlays you can put. XC hourly speed, which is roughly, I would say, it correlates directly to thermal strength. That's very helpful in terms of if you're in a big soaring area, for example, the Great Basin or the Central Valley or things like that, that generally speaking, head to this area because the air mass will be more promising. That's where the XC hourly speed can be useful. In addition to that, it's kind of like planning when you're going to turn around. And if the XC hourly speed keeps decreasing and decreasing and you're getting further and further away from your field, time to kind of turn around, because I guess you didn't grab information from the forecast in your morning brief well enough, and you're a little bit you're out a little too late in that case. Wave is something we also at least I use a lot when I am wave flying. Kempton, I know you and Rami both find that really useful. the wave overlay, especially in blue conditions without lenticular marking. Again, if there's clouds, fly the clouds. But the wave forecast can pick up oftentimes a lot of things that you wouldn't otherwise expect or suspect that there is lift there in terms of like secondary or tertiary waves off of small terrain features, things like that. And then the advantage of having it in the cockpit is that you can go fly over to that area and know when you're parked right where the forecast says there's going to be lift, and position yourself upwind or downwind of that. Finally, there's a wind layer too, so you'll get wind barbs over it. That's just helpful for figuring out kind of if you're picking one line or the other, if you can pick one that's maybe more crosswind than directly into the wind, or route planning downwind, planning the directions of your triangles if you haven't done so in the morning before you fly anyways. So another subject here. So radio, transponder, FLARM. This is stuff that I think radios and transponders don't really get much attention, because for most of us, we buy a glider, it's got a radio, and that's the radio we'll use until we sell the glider. But there is some intricacies, some things with radios, which is some of them, especially the newer ones, they have the ability to have dual frequency listening. So this is really helpful for team flying. So I can monitor 23.3, or for example, Morgan and I team fly a lot, and we'll both be monitoring 23.3. So if someone needs to call us, or there's someone calling out a position that might be close to us, we can still get that radio call, but we can transmit and also listen to our primary frequency. In the case that it's just him and I on a single frequency talking, we don't want to bother other people. So if you are someone who is team flying or just very chatty on the radio, I know I was very much at fault of this in my first couple seasons of flying. I had my fair share of flights where I was told to shut up by a mysterious voice on the radio. If you do have the radio that does have that dual frequency, look into it, figure out how to use it, because it's really courteous to others in using the one or two glider frequencies that we have. Avenal is also in a really poor position, because we can pick up radio traffic from Williams, Hollister, Byron, Tehachapi, Crystal, Inyokern, and then Truckee when they're down far enough on the Sierras, and none of those places can hear each other. So we're just kind of in the center of the mix. We hear everybody's chatter, and we can talk to everybody, but nobody else can hear each other. So they don't realize how much stuff is going on in the airwaves. So if you can separate that traffic up, or that chatter up, it is very helpful. Additionally, modern radios, Europeans are all going to this 8.33 spacing standard, which opens up 3 times as many radio frequencies as we normally use in the US. The US is, as far as I know, not planning on switching to 8.33 spacing. They're still going to be 25 kilohertz spacing. 8.33 times 3 is 25. So that's how you get it divides each channel that we use in the US into 3 different channels. The legality of this is kind of questionable if you're allowed to frequency split, as in getting those in between frequencies. So do your own research, educate yourself on if you wanted to do this. But if you had two glider pilots with both with dual frequency radios, and put them in 8.33 kilohertz mode, there's all of a sudden all of these other unused frequencies that you could kind of do with it what you wish. Beyond that, transponders, mode C, mode S, ADS-B, those are just different kinds of, primarily mode C and mode S are the 2 that we have. What's been kind of new in the transponder world, we got the ADS-B, which is sends out your GPS position real time to aircraft around you. And then you can also have the ability, if you do have FLARM or another display like a Stratus or something in the cockpit, able to see the position of other aircraft. So that's where ADS-B comes in handy, especially places that are high traffic, maybe mountains around LA or up in the Bay Area. Seeing all that power traffic that's around you becomes important. And then also being visible as well by having ADS-B out.
Hey, Zach?
Again, yep.
It's Doug here. Just one comment on the frequency. If you're talking on an 8.33 radio, a 25 radio in the same environment might pick it up because it doesn't discriminate tightly enough to stay on its frequency.
Yep.
So that you're not cleanly able to have a conversation and be sure no one else is hearing you.
Yeah, definitely good point to bring up. And yeah, like I said, the legality of this is questionable in the US. Do your own research on that. There is a lot of bleed over.
It's not questionable. It's not legal.
Okay. So, thank you for clarifying that then. It's not legal. Don't do this. Ignore the slide.
It doesn't mean it won't work.
Yeah.
I don't know, all the airliners have 833 spacing, so I don't know why you say it's not legal.
Well, that's interesting. And Bill, I'm not sure in the general aviation world, you don't. And
Yeah.
I don't know if all current radios are certified with tight enough frequency control to keep them in their band.
Bottom line, if don't do this. Disclaimer here, don't do this. This is illegal. Ignore this part of the presentation. Okay.
Well, let me say that the airliners, I mean, if they have to have the 833 for high altitude center frequencies can be in those frequencies. So
right, and they have to have it to fly in Europe.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I mean, it's in use. So
Okay.
if you're off, it's gonna say in its own lane whether your 25 megahertz is gonna pick up a wider range. I can't say for sure. I don't know.
Sure.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and move on then.
Yeah. Thank you guys. People who know better than me. When we're talking about transponders, another new feature in the last couple of years here, we've got TISB rebroadcast. So in the past, using FLARM, all we were able to pick up is other ADSB originally only other FLARM traffic, and then it expanded to seeing other ADSB traffic. But now we've got the ability to see other aircraft that only have like a mode C or mode S transponder without ADSB. Their position gets rebroadcast through ADSB, and then we're able to pick that up on our systems. It just depends on which system you're using in terms of what the display will show for rebroadcast. I know for the UDI 2, it shows like a question mark instead of an actual airplane icon. But that is a feature that is very useful for seeing as much traffic as possible. So I know FLARM, if you have a power FLARM from a while ago, it won't have the ability to do that, but there is ability to pay for an upgraded license, I think, on those older power FLARM cores to get that rebroadcast functionality out of it. Talking about FLARM here now specifically, just a reminder for everybody who flies with one to make sure your annual firmware update is done. A good time to do that is just at your glider annual. If you haven't done that and you're not sure if it's still good or if it's out of sync with your annual, just do that before you go ahead and fly this season. And then beyond that, make sure you're registered on OGN and FLARMnet. The link I have here is if you go to pacificsoaring.org, which is Region 11 council here. If you go to what is this, articles here, and then you go to how to set up your display on OGN. I think Philip put this presentation together for that, for OGN, which is Open Glider Network, the FLARM stations across the state that pick us up and display us on that Open Glider Network. And then in addition to that, if you haven't done so already, please register on FLARMnet. That makes it so that other gliders can see your actual contest ID, not just a hex code that shows up when you're flying around. Also, how is your traffic displayed? So I know people sometimes like club gliders or whatever gliders. I think they're more common in club gliders. Kind of have a basic FLARM display like this, which really is valid for collisions, and will show you if someone's sneaking up behind you or on a collision course head on or to the side. But it doesn't really give you information beyond that. Versus you can get traffic displays. Again, these are, I think, the S80s, S100s, V8s, whatever they are. I think actually this one on the right might be a FLARM specific standalone display. But these displays here give you a lot better situational awareness. Any flight computer that you have, UDIs, UDNs, LX navs, those should be able to display the FLARM traffic on that moving map as well, just depending on how the FLARM is connected to that device. So post-flight, I think I have only 1 or 2 more slides. So sorry, this is going a little longer than anticipated, but hopefully you guys are benefiting from it. So post-flight analysis and debrief is I think one of the biggest opportunities for learning when you are flying. So uploading and cataloging flights, I think, is very important for all glider pilots. I mean, there's always learning opportunities that you can get from your own flights. And then there's always the opportunity that someone else can learn from you by looking at your flight and looking at good performance and poor performance and mistakes and successes. So I highly encourage everybody to upload their flights. I'm partial to WeGlide, but OLC is just as good because it's still accessible to everyone. But in terms of going through and replaying your flights, I think WeGlide has really taken the cake on that. So we already kind of talked through some of those features on it. And in the interest of time here, I'll save that deep dive for another talk. But being able to replay your flights, looking at the day, looking at the lines other people took, it really is advantageous. I guess I'll keep this brief, but looking at other flights here, in terms of analysis tools that would typically be found in like a CU or CU on the website or desktop version. You can actually go to statistics here in WeGlide, and it has, I think, almost every statistic that you'd want out of that. So your wind speed and your distances on each leg, your thermals on each leg, which I find really beneficial to look at is if I was climbing 3.5 knots and Morgan was climbing 4.5 knots that day, what was he doing different than I to get the better climb? That might be something where he's leaving thermals earlier or picking them up later, or he's taking bigger climbs and fewer thermals, all of those things. That's good information. Percentage, the percent spent in thermals, if that's below standard McCready, I believe is 1/3, 33% of the time you're in a thermal. And if it's below that, that means you're getting better, taking better advantage of the energy between thermals. Attempts, this is one that's always good to look at and try to get down. So Nico today had a 1.4% of the time spent attempting, which is like, I think, climbing, but for less than like a minute or something like that. That's advantageous because when you commit to a thermal, every time you're trying to center it, you're wasting time that could otherwise be used climbing in a core of a thermal. So the less time you spent kind of centering a thermal or trying a thermal and then throwing it out because it doesn't end up turning out as you expected, the more success you'll have in increasing your climb rate. So if there's one metric to look at that you can improve, if this is 5% or 4 to 6% or whatever, and you want to make the goal of decreasing it this season, that will immediately, you'll see a direct increase in your overall cross-country speed by decreasing this percentage of tries. Because you're really not, if you look at Nico's climb rate for the day's climbed average was 4 knots here, and his attempts were 1.9 knots. So he's obviously leaving bad lift, so that's good to see. But he's also, this 11 tries he took and 1.4% of the time he could have spent also climbing or going further. We've got circling radius and bank angle here. We've got glide ratio in between glides and a detour percentage, so how much he varied off of a straight line, an optimum straight line. And then we've also got our glide phases in terms of our distance, our time, our speed, that is airspeed during time that we're spending in rising air versus our airspeed spent in sinking air. So that's good to see that Nico's flying about 7 knots slower in rising air than you would be in sinking air. Great tools to go through and debrief, not just look at your own flights, but then look at other people's flights who flew the same condition and see how they're doing and see if you could learn things from them and see maybe they're taking more thermals or they're taking less thermals, or they're leaving thermals earlier or later. And really figuring out how you can improve from watching others, or just looking at your own and figuring out being self-critical and looking at how you could improve your own flight that way. Yeah, again, discuss with others who also flew, and then apply takeaways to your next flight. So this is a good reason to keep a journal, keep a notepad or something like that, so that when it's a couple weeks between doing the post-flight analysis and then your next flight, you have you don't have to try and remember what you think you could improve on. That's all right there and ready to go for the next flight. So beyond that, this is that's the end of my presentation here. So thank you guys for hanging around. Open the floor to questions or comments or discussion now from the group.
Hey, let me say thank you for covering such a wide topic area. I think WeGlide has a lot of potential there. I think the hardest part is just finding it inside that interface, even if you know what you're looking for.
Yep.
I try to post on both OLC and WeGlide. You know, what the heck? Because most of my buddies are still on OLC, and I got like just one other guy at Warm Springs that does WeGlide, but it'd be good to get more. Yeah, I like those maps that show you all the flights from your own or from the whole takeoff thing or whatever is pretty cool, especially to show others like, look where we go, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, it's kind of a bragging rights thing.
Yeah.
Zach and Bill,
Go ahead.
I second that. This is Walt Rogers. For the time being, we should probably be posting on both OLC and WeGlide. Just make it a habit, so that we don't end up with two islands of flights.
Yeah.
People in one or the other. Just do both, and copy paste your comments, so you can just paste it into the new one or the second one that you do.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
all I wanted to say.
And I mean, I'm of the WeGlide camp. I do like what they're doing. But at the same time, OLC is such a valuable resource in terms of past flights. Until we have another 15 years of flight data on WeGlide, and we do need to keep OLC alive. And one of the ways we can do that, obviously, is by posting both places. So agree with both of you guys on that.
Yeah, I know this is a glider chat, but congrats on your twin engine check out there,
Oh,
Zach.
thank you.
Look forward to flying with you in a couple weeks.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I see the value in WeGlide in, you know, in a discussion that, you know, you and Walt and I and some others have been having about trying to, you know, get some new folks into gliding and soaring, and in particular kind of zeroing in on the pilots who people are already flying. The advantage of WeGlide is having, you know, if you take some photos of your flight and you can post those photos in the WeGlide app, you know, it's kind of an all-encompassing thing. It's got all the fun bells and whistles. So I see
Yeah,
that
one of
advantage.
their cool new features that OLC definitely doesn't have is the 3D replay that I'm playing right now. So this was something that Avery used to have. We used to host. You could upload your IGC file to that, and this would literally do the exact same thing. But almost the same week that WeGlide introduced this feature, Avery shut down. So if you do want to have a great way to show like non-glider pilots what you did, this is it right here.
Right.
And it obviously gets more interesting like when you're on a ridge or something like that. But yeah, it's just an excellent way to kind of show people what we do as glider pilots.
Say, Zach.
Yep.
Walt Rogers here. The SSA is in negotiations with WeGlide.
Oh, great.
There may be a special plan for maybe not the full price for a premium upgrade for SSA members. Those are the kind of things and other things that are being discussed. So stay tuned.
Great.
I have to say,
OLC does allow photograph upload as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, it does. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I guess I wasn't aware of that, but I started playing last year summer, and I didn't really use it more than a few flights with Navigator. And that will do the 3D, you know, it uploads it and shows 3D from, I guess it just loads into Google Earth, which is what this probably is.
Yep.
So it was nice to have that. So, but I think maybe I'll be switching over, but I'm going to keep trying goofing around with Navigator.
Yeah.
What do you mean by Navigator?
It's the
CU
CU Navigator.
Oh,
Yeah.
CU. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Any other questions out there? Well,
Yeah,
Zach is-
thanks for putting this together, Zach. It's really good.
Yeah,
man.
and thank you to Christopher for doing this long term and keeping this going and
Sure.
finding the speakers, doing all the back end work. So
Yeah.
it's a big undertaking. So I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I appreciate that you're, kind of covered a lot of everything that's important for us to continue to, especially this time of year when we're kind of getting ramped up and, you're talking about the goals, talking about, different resources and talking about thinking, each time you go out there, and something I've been focusing more on is, each time you go out and fly, have a goal, have a triangle or a task or something you're going to do, not just, oh, I'm just going to go out and fly. Like that's how you learn, by setting goals for yourself and then figuring out, did I make it? What did I do wrong? What did I do right? And then have a local friendly competition with another pilot to just push yourself and have more fun.
Exactly. Yeah. One last thing I'll have as closing remark here. We're getting in the soaring season. A lot of people, like I mentioned, have not flown in 6 to 8 months. So make sure you ease back into the season. If you
Yeah.
haven't stayed current over the winter, your skills are not going to be where they are when you left
Yeah.
them, when you put the ship away for the winter. So just to avoid extra insurance claims, broken gliders, or anybody getting
Mhm.
hurt, make
Yeah.
sure you take those first couple months a little easier than you would be at the end of the season last year.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Take your, ask your CFI to take you up again or whatever it takes, or take your, senior pilot to jump in, in your twin ship with you for sure. So always to safety. Thanks for repeating that, Zach. One other just quick point I want to make, since I kind of briefly touched on it a moment ago, is that please, whenever you go out into the world and you bump into somebody, just if you have a chance to say, I do this really cool thing, activity, just we need to really reach out and kind of find new blood in our sport. So just just putting the word out there to however you can do it. If you, I bought a cool hat, cap with the glider on the front of the cap at the Reno convention, and so people kind of look up at that and go, oh, what's that? So please just do what you can to reach out and to kind of harness some new folks into our soaring sport. So. Well, Zach, thanks again. Appreciate you coming on again. You did a great talk last year, and I appreciate you coming back on again. And just keep on doing what you're doing. You're out there, making great progress. And I fingers crossed that when you become an airline pilot, you still have time for soaring.
Yeah, hopefully.
Block days.
Yep.
Right. There you go. So, all right, well, with that said, I guess we'll sign off for tonight, and thank everybody for joining in. And please remember to check us on YouTube at the Antelope Valley Soaring YouTube channel if you want to watch the previous videos, and Zach's will be up there in a couple of days as well.
Take care, everyone. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Ciao.
everybody.
Bye.
Con Dios.
Bye.
Christopher,
Yes, sir.
I see the last